Few people who attended the Rose Garden event on September 26th wore masks, and the chairs were spaced close together. President Trump was announcing the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, but as the guests mingled and chatted amongst themselves, the coronavirus was silently creeping through the air.
It is, for all intents and purposes, a SuperSpreader event.
Well, God bless you, and as always, I thank you for your time. By now, we've all seen this video of the coronavirus creeping in, and we all know how it turns out. And if you think about it, at one time or another, we've all experienced mess creeping into our lives, and we know how it's turned out. I mean, just think about it. You just doing you, and before you know it, something has slipped into your spirit, your psyche, your thoughts, your head. Poison that spreads to you, and poison that you have the potential to spread to others. Let's talk about SuperSpreader.
It still wouldn't be enough.
Rose Garden event that an outbreak of COVID was initiated, and to this day they don't know exactly sure who brought it in or the long-term effects of any who became infected. What they do know is that once the poison got started, it had the potential of irreparably damaging anyone who it came into contact with. And as I opened my Bible and I found myself standing in the brutal wilderness of the Sinai, inhaling the arid desert air, I watched God as he watched the encampment of about 3 million recently freed Israelites. And I overheard God's people spreading poison. Numbers 11 says they started complaining about the God who knows all, sees all, and hears all, and all that's said out loud and all that's said in our hearts. God caught wind of the very truth of who they were, and he wasn't having it. The scriptures say God dealt with them, sending fire, destroying some of their property as well as some of their lives. And all of this in response to their disrespect of he who was, who is, and disregard of all that he had done. They created a name for that location, and Gill says they did it to perpetuate the memory of the punishment for their sins so that it might be a terror and warning to others. And if I had time, I'd stop right there and I wonder out loud if maybe we should name the places where we did wrong and God punished us, so that those who come behind us because of our wrongs, they'll learn to do better and be better Christians than us. Maybe if we just honestly acknowledge where we messed up, then we can honestly tell our kids why we missed out on a particular come up, and then they'll do better, knowing that God is not a God to do what you like and where you can do whatever you want and not be held accountable, and maybe then they'll rise up. And I know what the don't worry, be happy preachers have to say, but I just prefer what God had told Moses to say. They were disrespecting God, and the Bible says God held them accountable. Understand, there's no shame in imperfection. God made us knowing we wouldn't get everything right. But the God of bless us is also the God of make us better. God had blessed them and was continuing to bless them, but still hateful negativity spewed from their mouths. And the most negativity came from those who knew God the least. When God brought the Israelites out of Egyptian bondage, the population wasn't limited to worshipers of God, but the crowd also was infiltrated with non-worshipers who wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to escape the oppression by virtue of the power of God. The text calls these people the rabble. People in the church crowd who weren't committed to giving their lives to God, yet were committed to what God could give to them. People who had slipped into the church crowd, who didn't want to live right but had the nerve to live with the expectations based on the promises of God to those who were at least halfway trying to get it right. And now these "what have you done for me lately" saints who had slithered in were once again slipping their cynicism in the back door. The text says the contaminant started with the unsaved, and again those who were saved allowed themselves to become infected. Charles Spurgeon says often problems begin among the church members who are unconverted and want to be Christians as well as worldlings too. I mean, people just out there complaining not about what God hasn't done, but complaining because they're still not satisfied with all that God has already done. And I know it wasn't just what they were saying. I read the text and it was also the attitude they were displaying. And you know, the experts say that what makes COVID so contagious and dangerous is not just what comes out of the spreaders' mouths, but the attitude that's displayed as the spreaders have no regard for what comes out of their COVIDity mouths. It's the attitude that's killing people. And here we have God's people who complained not that he wasn't giving them food to eat, but what he gave them was not what their trifling selves wanted to eat. Talking about if we only had meat to eat, but now we've lost our appetite. Guzik said God never told them they couldn't hunt. Plus, they had been blessed with flocks. They chose to wait. Guzik writes, they could have provided meat for themselves, but all they wanted to do was to cry. And every time we raise holy hands talking about what God is going to do, knowing we've not made use of what he has done, that is tantamount to saying that all that he's done is still not enough. And once that attitude gets into our head, it has a way of paralyzing our hands. And before we know it, years have passed, and we and all who we have influence over are sitting idly by and watching the world go by as they wait. It was more than just what the spreaders said. It was the attitude that they displayed. And if it were just you and I back on the deck sipping a little tea, I mentioned that we have to be careful because our kids, our grandkids, the saved and the unsaved, they're watching us. And far too often they're being exposed not just to detrimental words, but detrimental attitudes. It's contagious, it's debilitating, and it spreads. So now Moses hears the complaints, becomes infected by the complaints and then complains about the infection to God. Moses prays, I'm your servant, Lord, so why are you doing this to me? What have I done to deserve this? You've made me responsible for these people, and they're not even my children. He says, if this is the way you're going to treat me, just kill me now and end my miserable life. And it's a terrible thing when we allow people who live lives with no respect for God to twist us until we lose respect and decide to stop living our lives devoted to God. Yet, so much of this malarkey that we do in the name of God, if we're only honest with ourselves, it's no more than social opportunities about us that we blame on God. Terrible thing. But truth be told, everyone living as a Christian is not living a life that honors God. Moses allowed this toxin to get into his system, disrespectful, depressed, and even questioning God's plan for his life. But the thing about being for real with God, as opposed to just being along for the ride with God, no matter what we say we want, if you're for real with God, God will only give us what we need. And I like that about God because I don't know about you, but I've walked with God long enough during the good times that even if I trip up during the bad times, I know for sure he'll show up with what I need just right on time. God heard what Moses said, but gave Moses what he needed. God told Moses, I'm going to give them some meat, but tell you what, bring me 70 of your for real saints, and I'm going to take some of the spirit that I put in you, and I'm going to put it in them so that they can help my people. So essentially, God is telling Moses, look here, partner, I know things can get bad. I'm the one hung on the cross, but I created you. It's me. I live inside of you. Don't you know that what I put in you makes you more than great enough to do all that I've asked you to do? God said, hold up. I've got something for you. These men, instead of spreading inspirational thoughts of what we want God to be for us, they went around spreading that I've prayed all night long, and fact of the matter is, I know what God has been for us. The text says these super spreaders, they spoke about God both in the tent and out in the encampment. And I hope you caught that, because then and now, it's important to God that we study his word. So he made his word available not only in the church, but also outside of the church. And I hope you caught that, because God said, I don't care who's in charge. I'm in charge of my spirit, and my spirit is for my people. I hope you caught that, because we ourselves choose what it is that's spreading into our spirit, just like we choose what it is we're spreading to others. I pray that you choose to be God's super spreader.
Can there be anyone?